Yeah. One of the things I do comment on is we are talking about AI, but doing AV is just like seriously challenging. So hopefully we can get that one solved. That may be more difficult than AI. So today we're going to be talking about a very exciting topic, AGI. And this is also a topic that will probably impact everyone, more so than any other technology in history. So I love this quote by the science fiction author William Gibson. The future is already here, it's just not evenly distributed. And what he means by that is, you know, we still have subsistence farmers in Angola, and now we're talking about AI, and we have everything in between. So there's a lot of unevenness, and that's probably never going to change. It's kind of due to a lot of factors, including the size of our world. But that's sort of where we're at. I won't go over my background too much. I mean, I first got fascinated with AI when I was a kid, and my parents took me to 2001: A Space Odyssey, and there was HAL. And HAL was the AI. It had no face, no image, et cetera, et cetera. And I was absolutely fascinated. I wanted to do that in my entire life. So I've been in technology since I was 6, and that's basically almost the Stone Age at this point. So I've been in technology my entire life. I retired 10 years ago, actually, so that I could just play around with technology all day long. I'm also an angel investor, so I'm a managing partner with seed funders, which we do early stage investing in companies, including technology companies. And I do give back a lot. So I teach a class at FIU. I taught one last week at FAU. I mentor startups, and I advise several more. So that's a little bit about me. This image to the right, all the images in this deck are AI generated except one. And this one to the right is actually kind of old-timey looking. So it was done in 2023, and I've left it in the deck on purpose. I sometimes joke, like I said, I gave this same lecture at FAU 1 week ago today, and I was concerned that it was already out of date. So things are moving that rapidly. So, but we'll just carry on with that. Today we're going to cover some terms and concepts, a little bit about the background and history of AI, relevant to what we're talking about, recent accomplishments in AI, where the tech is today, where it is likely to go next, and then there is no AGI conversation that's complete without talking about the concerns with AGI. So to get the most out of it, feel free to take screenshots.
Sorry, I'm just going to hide this because it's bothering me here.
Oh, I thought it was just on my copy.
Yeah.
Thank you. So here we go. So terms and concepts. If you want to screenshot that, I'm not going to go over this page. There's a lot of terms here. On the next screen, though, I will talk about the essential terms that you're going to need for this conversation. So, all right, I'll give it another few seconds. So these are terms that are relevant to generative AI. AI in general is broken into two broad categories today. One is analytical AI, and the other one is generative AI. So assuming that you've used the internet, social, including social, email, et cetera, you've been using analytical AI because AI is trained on almost everything for analysis. So generative AI is relatively new. And in fact, it really got onto the world stage in the 2020s, probably with an article that was published in The Guardian in 2022, and it said, an AI wrote this article, "Are You Scared Human?" And that was the name of the article. And it got a lot of conversation, press, it kind of went around the world, and that was the early days. That was like GPT-2. So now we're at 01. We'll talk about what that means tonight. Here are the terms that we need to know for tonight. So today we're at what we would call artificial narrow intelligence. This simply means that it is very, very good at a very narrow area. And in fact, AI currently surpasses humans, most humans, on most things today. That's kind of scary. If you go to ChatGPT and ask about quantum field theory, which I did last week, it can give me everything that I don't know about quantum field theory. Or if you want to talk about ontology, which is an area of philosophy, et cetera, et cetera. It's actually very good. In fact, it has basically the world's knowledge in its database. We'll caveat that a little bit. So AI is where we are today. Artificial general intelligence is when the AI can be a functional equivalent to a human. And so the father of AI, which is Alan Turing, came up with a thing called the Turing test. The Turing test, and I'll give it a modern version of this since that was the 1950s. The modern version of the Turing test is if I had two chat windows up on my computer, one of them is an AI and one of them is a human, and I was able to ask any question and interact in any way, and I could not tell the difference between the human and the AI, then it's passed the Turing test. Okay? Now, the irony is that today, and Alan Turing did not imagine this, the AI would probably have to dumb it down so that it wouldn't look like an AI. Because you would ask it a question and humans just are not that good at that and that and that and that. So that's interesting. So that's the Turing test. Now, ASI, artificial superintelligence, is when AI surpasses the capabilities of a human. Now, the supposition is that if we achieve AGI, and that's not a guarantee, but if we achieve AGI, we will probably achieve ASI very soon thereafter. And the reason for that is called there's no constraint on the substrate. Now, that's a fancy way of saying that here, I'm limited to this little area right in here, which, by the way, runs on about 25 watts of power. It's very efficient. 25 watts of power, this little biological wetware computer, but I don't have that limitation on AI. I can create this entire room full of stuff. In fact, some could say that if the AI networks together all over the world, it could become unimaginably intelligent. That's ASI. Now, I want to counter-define two terms, and I call them counter-define, because they're often used interchangeably with this ASI and AGI. And one is that it's sentient. Sentient simply means that it can feel something. Today, it is not sentient. It can emulate emotions. It is not suffering, even if it expresses that it's suffering. Okay? It is not sentient. Sapient, which is also a term, which is, it cognitively operates at the same level of a computer. Yeah, maybe it's sapient, but it's not sentient. The second thing is, it's not conscious. Now, there have been people, particularly, there have been some AI scientists who have said, no, it's conscious. Why? Because it surprised them. It's called an emergent property. We'll talk a little bit about that. But consciousness, to be honest, humans don't understand it yet. It is actually an active area of study in some major universities in the world studying consciousness. And we still do not know what it is. There are some theories, but we don't know the answer. So we can't say that the AGI is conscious. Now, a little bit about background in history. This is just a level set about where we've come. In 1997, AI became the world's best chess player. In 2011, AI became the world's greatest Jeopardy player. In 2015, AI became the world's best Go player, and Go being considered probably the most difficult game there is. And so the scientists wanted to set another goalpost, and that was, we want AI to win the gold medal at the International Math Olympiad. These are the best math minds in the world. There's a handful of them, and they compete for various prizes. In the last International Math Olympiad, AI got a silver medal. It didn't quite make gold yet. So that's where we are. Now, how did we get here? Well, there's a couple of things. This didn't happen like overnight. This has been building, this is a technology roadmap, started with semiconductors and then systems and the networks and the internet, apps, and then mobile. It's been cumulative. But I say that there's probably two things that became the thing that lit it on fire. The first one is that we have this thing called the web, which is an application of the internet. And the web basically has human knowledge available on it. So if you can train something on all that information, you have all the knowledge you could possibly want. The second thing, ironically, is video games. Now, why video games? Well, it just so happens that in most computers, there is a second processor called a GPU. You have a CPU, which does the calculation. That's the heart, if you will, of the computer. But you have a GPU, which is the graphical processing unit. Well, it just so happens that it's really good about doing floating point calculations, a lot of them really fast. And so it was put into service for doing training of AI and inference, which is the answering AI. So it was a GPU, which is the reason why NVIDIA became the most valuable company in the world, and its stock price went up 10 times in the last 2 years. It's the GPUs, it's the video processing units that are being used for AI, and people cannot buy enough. Now, just a geopolitical thing to add a little wrinkle here is the single point of failure for AI is this little factory in Taiwan. Why? 60% of all the GPUs in the world are made at TSMC in Taiwan at one factory, which is one of the reasons why the US does not want Chinese taking over Taiwan. It's probably going to be an act of war, I'm just saying. So it's really going to stop everything. Now, with that said, there are lots of companies that are trying very hard to either do the GPUs here in the United States with the CHIPS Act that was, and also doing alternatives to the standard GPU. If you are an investor in public companies, you might want to look for the IPO of a company called Cerebras. Cerebras is supposed to IPO in the next 6 months, and it has an alternative chip. So they're handling the hardware side of stuff. And there are several others that are currently contenders for being able to do this. Because right now, NVIDIA is it. I mean, literally. So now, when various scientists, computer scientists, neuroscientists, et cetera, were looking at this whole evolution of AI, they were absolutely wrong on their predictions. They were absolutely surprised. It was just kind of assumed that we would, use AI to figure out low-skilled, then medium-skilled, and high-skilled, and that these computers would never be able to be creative. That's something only humans could be, is creative. Well, the fact of the matter is it happened the opposite way. It first became creative, and we had computer-generated images, and we had text that was generated, and we had music that is generated, and that's the first thing that happened. It was the creative. The next thing that's going down is that it's threatening the high-skilled jobs. The 3 most threatened job categories are actually all high-skilled job categories: medical, legal, and technical. I have one of my brothers is a programmer for Southwest Airlines. In the last 2 years, 1/3 of his job is now done by AI. It does 1/3 of his job. Now, my brother has a job, he will continue to have a job, and he's happy that AI is doing 1/3 of his work. Why? Because it's doing the third of his work he didn't like doing all the test cases and testing it over and over again and all that stuff, okay? The legal profession, paralegals are in peril because they probably will be replaced by AI. There are a lot of companies right now that are looking at doing AI-based paralegals. And then medical. Today, AI can predict, can read an X-ray better than most humans, most radiologists. And so if you are in Nebraska and you don't have a top-notch radiologist in Nebraska, you've got to use AI. And anything other than using AI is malpractice because you just don't have the training to do that. Then after the high-skilled, or what sometimes are called medium-skilled jobs, such as journalism and administrative and marketing, these jobs are going to be impacted by it. So this is kind of the world we live in, and just for those of you who either like old movies or just old like me, there was Woody Allen has this funny movie called Sleeper, and it's set in the future, and the people just sit around all day long because everything has been automated and they don't do anything except write poetry. And it's really bad poetry, by the way. So I won't talk about some of the other things like the orb and some of the other things that they have in the movie. Anyway, it's definitely worth watching. So what has AI done for us lately? Well, I won't go, this is not an exhaustive list, but it was AI that allowed us to figure out the first COVID vaccination in 62 days, which was absolutely unheard of in terms of speed. Because of AlphaFold, there have been several diseases which now have cures. Degenerative diseases and some genetic disorders have now already have drugs that have been identified and are now being put through clinical trials. I talked about cancer treatment. There are some kinds of diabetic retinopathy, pardon me, I'm not a medical guy. But anyway, there are certain pathologies of the eyeball as a result of diabetes, which can now be detected reliably, very reliably with AI. And I could go on. One of the interesting things, I think, is that now data centers are now running with 40% less power than they were even 10 years ago because of optimizations that are managed by AI. Autonomous vehicles, everybody knows about that one. And we don't have full self-driving just yet, but we're getting there. Actually, we have semi-full self-driving. Cadillac, for example, has one that will go on freeways. It actually works better than the Tesla equivalent. So that's sort of where we have. Now, I'm going to get a little bit technical here for the next few slides. Hopefully some of you are technical people. What works well and what doesn't work well in November of 2024? Okay? Well, semantic search, which is being able to search for related concepts, works extremely well. Okay? That's the thing that gives it its human character when you talk to GPT, because it can relate ideas connected. Now, semantic memory is only one of several types of memory that humans have. There's at least two others. One is called episodic memory, and the other one is called procedural memory. And it's not so good at these just yet. It has an amazing depth of knowledge, basically the world's knowledge, and it's moderate in linear reasoning. So reasoning which follows a one-way path. What doesn't work that well is when it's nonlinear reasoning. Accuracy is a key issue, memory is an issue, and learning. Those are four major deficiencies today. Now, when it comes to this nonlinear reasoning, OpenAI just introduced a product about a month ago called O1, which does the nonlinear reasoning. There's another term for it that's used, it's coined by Dan Kahneman, which is type 1 and type 2 thinking. Type 1 thinking is that I say, you know, what's the weather like today? Oh, it's hot, okay? If I say, what is 34 times 15, you're not going to be able to give me an answer like that. You're going to need to process that. And that's the thing that AI has historically been bad at, is type 2 thinking. So it is now getting pretty good. In fact, O1, which is what the model is called, is so good that it operates at a PhD level for physics, chemistry, and math. Okay? And it's able to process things, but it takes its time, just like you would take your time on this, but it's still faster than most humans. Accuracy is a big issue. It's called hallucinations. And that's still a problem. And it's getting better and better, but it's still a problem. Memory is limited, and like I say, it's not really set up for learning. So, what have we done in order to get around these problems? Well, if you have an application that's built for a particular purpose, you can use various techniques to get around some of these problems, like learning, reasoning, and so forth and so on. So various techniques, some of them, I'll just throw out some words. Anything that's, by the way, in this presentation in quotes is considered jargon. But prompt engineering, chain of thought, these are some of the techniques. In terms of accuracy, sometimes this is an interesting idea. It's called a mixture of experts. The idea is that you get more than one AI to look at a problem, and then you kind of take a vote. Okay, so the memory is getting better. The biggest one in terms of memory is 10 megabytes, and that's the Gemini model for Google, but the Google model has some other problems. Okay, now this is what works really well, which is images. This image in the bottom right-hand corner, I'm completely amazed by this. This image was created by an AI, and the reason to my mind that it's so amazing, not only is it photorealistic, down to a high resolution, you can see the pores in his face, but it got the reflection of the top of the swimming pool correct, and it was able to do this. So, now this person does not exist. Now, a lot of people have heard of deep fakes, right? Deep fakes are actually easier than this. Why? If I do a deep fake of a politician, I have thousands of pictures to work from. So I have him or her at every imaginable angle, different lighting, everything like that. For me to be able to reproduce a fake image of a person, particularly a popular person, that's not that hard. But to create something completely from scratch where no human looks like that, that's pretty amazing. So right now we can generate videos because a video is basically a moving set of pictures, right? But the limit on most tools is about 1 minute, and it's not very fluid in terms of moving through frames. It's getting better though. There are a lot of defects in this, and so you end up having to curate, is the term I guess you can use. In other words, about 9 out of 10 photographs you have to toss. But still, you can generate 10 pictures in a couple of minutes. So it's interesting that there are some things that it's better at than others. The most difficult thing for an image generator to create is actually a hand, okay? And in fact, if you look at literally most AI-generated images that involve a hand, they have a defect. Okay, so you have to toss it out. Now, why is that? The reason for that is when it comes to a face, we have 1 billion pictures of what a face looks like. It's almost always this way, right? A hand can be this way, this way, this way, this way, this way, this way. There's so many different angles, and it can be together, it can be spread apart. We just don't have enough data on it, okay? So it's difficult to reproduce. If you want to really freak out an image generator, an AI image generator, ask it for a hand on an umbrella. It just practically has a meltdown, okay? So now, music. I want to play about a half a minute of this because if there was anything that I have been amazed about in all of AI, it's the ability to make music. it can now write the lyrics, write the music, play the music, and sing it as good as a human. Okay, here's something that I wrote, i.e. the AI wrote. Okay. Could you turn it up?
Velvet curtains part the night, diamonds sparkle amber light, polished floors they shine so bright. This is where we take our flight. Champagne glasses clink, they sing, every lady's wearing bling. Gentlemen with tailored flair, magic fills the heady air. We'll have martinis, maybe two, dressed in pearls and dressed in blue. Feel the rhythm, feel the sway.
And this is 100%
Dance
AI
until the
created.
break of day. Sip the nectar.
Okay. So, to me, when I was able to, and by the way, this, I know at least one person has used this website. It's called Suno. And a lot of people apparently have used the website, and a lot of people haven't, but I would definitely go there. To me, when I heard the music, I almost cried. I mean, because it's so profound. Now, we'll talk about some of the ethics and concerns about AI later in the presentation, but you know, the thing that occurred to me is that, you know, there's some talk that we may displace jobs and, you know, take people out of work and stuff like that. Well, there's a different way of looking at it as well, and that's what occurred to me when I heard this. I now can be a composer. I now can play instruments that I couldn't play before. I can be a fiction writer. I can be a physicist. Basically, I can have superpowers. So one way of looking at this is that the ability to augment human capability makes us full of superpowers at this point. So we'll talk about some of the concerns, because there's another side of it as well. We'll talk about some of those concerns later in the presentation. But now let's talk about what's next. Here is a framework. The good news is, or the interesting news is that at this point, we are so close to AGI that we now have a framework for what it will take to get there. To quote Sam Altman, who is the CEO of OpenAI, we are thousands of days away from AGI. He made that quote about a month ago, okay, about a month or 6 weeks ago. And that's how close we are. Now, let me explain this chart, because I think that this is probably the framework we'll use. The top right-hand corner is the achievement of AGI, okay? And this is where we are today. On the x-axis is the affective scale, because in order to be a functional human, you need to have some emotions. So we start at chat, then sympathetic emotions, empathetic emotions, and emotional intelligence is sort of where we hit, you know, the top. By the way, this chart was created by Andrew Ning and me. Andrew Ning is a VC. He's a fairly famous one in Silicon Valley. He's a professor at Stanford, and he's a partner with Sequoia. Sequoia Ventures has backed every major company you've heard of, Facebook, YouTube, you know, so forth and so on. That's Andrew. So, so this is the emotional scale, if you will, the affective capability. On the y-axis is the cognitive capability. So we have reasoning and context. We're past that now. And then the next level is going to be reasoning and learning. We're kind of at that point now. And then agency and tool use. And I need to explain the term agency. You will sometimes hear the term agentic AI. Agentic AI means AI that has agency. What is agency? Agency means that it can operate on its own. okay? So an agentic AI is an AI that can operate on its own. In other words, it's autonomous, okay? Today, when we go to ChatGPT, it responds to us. I say, you know, what is da 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 da, okay? And it responds. It can do all this analysis, but it doesn't do anything that I'm not asking it to do. At some point, it will need to be able to operate on its own, and that's called agentic AI. So, now, if you have agentic AI and you give it tool use, the ability to do things in the real world, now you have something pretty powerful, okay? Now, what do I mean by tool use? I don't mean screwdrivers, or it could be, okay? It could be a robot, so it could have a hand, but what I mean is that if I wanted an AI that's in my administrative assistant, it needs to be able to talk to a travel website and to talk to our credit card website and needs to be able to go to, you know, maybe, you know, marketing websites, you know, for various countries and their vacations and so forth and so on. So I need tool use. Now today, it can still go to the web and try to figure out things, or you can give it some more precise things. There are some things that are just not suitable for AI. So AI is kind of known for not doing good at math, okay? You know, the joke is that ask almost any AI how many R's are in the word strawberry, okay? And it will get it wrong. Up until '01, by the way, that new model, that's one of the things they insisted that it could be able to do. So it's not good at counting, but why does it need to count? Just have it where it can connect to a calculator. So that's tool use, a calculator. Now, remember we said at the beginning that it's ANI, artificial narrow intelligence. We're very good at a very narrow area. So how do you make it really smart? Well, you put a bunch of very narrowly focused AIs together in a swarm or some other aggregation, and now you have multi-agency. Now you have something that it's not organized the same way humans are, but it's functionally equivalent to a human. So think about swarms of bees or ants, an ant farm, et cetera, et cetera. For those of you who like video games, this was foretold in a video game, Mass Effect 2. Okay, the character's name is the Geth, and the Geth is basically a bunch of autonomous intelligences that together represent the Geth. It's a unified, every instance of that species is connected to the same thing. Okay, so anyway, this is the framework we're working on. Let's go through some of this. Where are we at with this? Reasoning and learning, like I said, OpenAI introduced GPT-01, which was able to do better reasoning. And so we're getting there. Sam Altman says the reason why GPT-5 has not been introduced yet is because he can't get enough computer power. I mean, right now, you know, Elon Musk tried to buy up 100,000, I think it was 100,000 of these processing units. Here, it's it's gone crazy them trying to buy stuff, and they're outbidding, you know, they're overbidding each other to buy these units and stuff like that. Basically, we're down to lack of power and lack of processors, okay? Now, what happens when we achieve reasoning and learning? Well, we really are at the point right now where a police department could say, here is all the written, digital, and measured evidence who committed the crime, and it would do better than a human. We are today at a place where a movie director could say, here's the script, here are the actors that I have hired to do this movie, here's what the production design looks like, write me the entire score for the movie. And this is being done today. It would take about a week, and the reason why it would take so long to write the entire score from a movie, including all the incidental music, is because you would have to curate it. No, I don't like that style. Or you would be making some personal style judgments. So that's kind of where we are with just reasoning and learning today. Now let's talk about agency and tools. We've described what agentic means, being able to operate on its own without a human in the loop. Now, the way we interact with the AI looks different. So today, I go to ChatGPT and I give it a task. I say, tell me, here's what I'm looking for, tell me what the answer is. When you're talking about agentic, you don't give it tasks, you give it goals. You say, this is what I want to achieve. And it figures out the tasks. So this is pretty important. So in order to do that, the problems that we need to solve are, we need to have a robust planning capability. Because every time you do something, you should do it twice. What do I mean by that? This was actually a quote from one of the famous basketball players. He said, every time I shoot that hoop, I do it twice. He does it once in his head, and then once in real life. That's where planning capability is, and that's one of the things that makes us unique, is before we do something, we usually have some semblance of all the steps that we will go through and how we will do it in our head. So we need a planning capability, we need reflection, the ability to assess how we did, and so we can improve it, and then we need to have suitable tools. So once we achieve agency with tools, we'll be able to do things like have an administrative assistant which can do everything. I can just say, keep my investors happy, okay? And it figures out that here are all the investors, this is what this one likes, this is what this one likes, this is what this one likes, oh, I need to go get the financial reports, I need to be able to do this, this, and this, and it goes and figures it out. And the only thing I said is keep my investors happy, here's how I'm going to measure you on that particular goal, okay? So this is, we're getting very close to this. And I know that today we have some semblance of that. I know of at least one startup that is that's working on this. The next one, which is basically where replaces the paralegals, okay? It knows the law firm's workload, it knows the cases they have, it needs to go figure out where it needs to get the information, prepare the briefs, does all the stuff that a paralegal does and provides it to the attorneys, okay? So then the last step is multi-agency. This is when we have a cooperation between. Now in full disclosure, and maybe a little advertising, I'm an advisor for a startup called Swarms.ai. A couple of people are gonna know this one, and they're looking to do this one already, which is to get a swarm of AIs to cooperate, okay? They may organize themselves as a hierarchy, which is, by the way, how they usually organize themselves. They have a boss AI, they have like mid-manager AIs, and then they have task AIs. And they organize that way in order to accomplish a particular goal. So swarms, I think at last count we have 100,000, a couple of 100,000 agents active at any given time. Okay, operating in a swarm capability. So it's still early times, but this is where we're going to be able to say, okay, I want some very broad goals. I want you to watch the cybersecurity of the company. Here's access to all my servers. Here's access to all the emails, so forth and so on. Keep me secure. And it does whatever it needs to do. It also looks at the economic, political, and environmental conditions that it's operating under. So many years ago, Walmart was already doing that. So when I was in consulting, one of my clients was Walmart, and they start moving trucks when there is prediction of weather coming in. Oh, I thought you were saying I had 5 minutes. I'm going, got a little ways to go. So, all right, here, the woman on the right does not exist. Hi.
They start moving trucks logistically before the weather patterns change.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't finish that idea. Walmart has, what they do is this is really more statistics than AI. It is now AI driven. But they start moving product to the distribution warehouses in anticipation of weather even before it happens. And this is when I found out, and I think I can give away this piece of information, that strawberry Pop-Tarts double in sales during natural disasters. And so they start moving strawberry Pop-Tarts to the distribution centers. People go for it for energy and for comfort. So,
Are you saying before the disaster hits, they know what's going to happen? Or
they have, right. Based on statistical models about when you have hurricane-type weather and where it's likely to land and other factors, they understand that they're going to be short of a particular inventory item and that they need to move stuff around.
it's like an emergency route for
Yeah. And so, I mean, like most people don't, well, I'm going off topic, but here's another interesting statistic for you. If I buy diapers on a Friday night, 70% chance I'm buying beer as well. So it's very predictable. And so some stores actually put them on opposite sides of the store so that you can move through the store, and some of them put it next to each other. Okay, but anyway, just a little statistic. Anyway, the woman to the right does not exist, but she's extremely popular in South Korea. She is a digital, that's Sua, and Sua is very popular. She shows up in advertisements, on TV commercials, she's on billboards, she's everywhere, Sua, but she doesn't exist. So it's a digital human. And in fact, one of the ways that AI will probably appear is there are a couple of ways. One is we talked about chat, right? You're going to have AI sending you emails or text messages and whatnot. But what will also happen is you will be on a Zoom call someday where you got all the little pictures on your Zoom call, and one of the people on your Zoom call is not a people at all. It's a digital human. It's going to look like a human, it's going to move its head, it's going to talk, and it's going to think. But that's a digital human. And there's at least one startup that I know of that's already experimenting with that. So it's basically a UI to an AI process in the back, but that's a digital human. So it may not be a robot, it may be a digital human. That's a digital human. Or it could be what is called embodied. Embodied AI simply means robot. It means it's in a body. So we're getting better with robots. There's at least 8 companies, I'm sure you've seen them, including Elon's company. His is not the best, by the way. His is about the 3rd best. But we're going to have, that may be 2030 or the 2040s before we really get a humanoid robot. So that's kind of where we are with that. Yes?
Yeah, like in Japan, they have a shortage of...
Yes.
And they're using...
Yeah, they're using... Well, okay, so this is interesting. Here's a little thing. So this gentleman said something about... Yeah. So the gentleman said that in Japan that they're already using some of these robots. Now, here's a little piece of information, which is, I think, very interesting. In Japan, they are much warmer towards mechanical and semi-mechanical things than we are in humans. Some people would say part of it is Shintoism. Shintoism believes that there's kami, that there's spirit in everything. And so even if it's a robot, even if it's a mechanical thing, they believe that there's some life in there, that there's life in everything. And so when they see a robot, even though it's just a head on a table talking to them, they don't see it as, most Americans would shun it. This is creepy, this is scary, get it away from me, it's mechanical. Whereas in the Japanese culture, it's a little bit different. They see that it has some kami, it has some spirit. So, which is an interesting thing. And by the way, if you haven't looked up, if you don't know the term, look up the word uncanny valley. Uncanny valley is this concept that you deal with a mechanical device like a robot that looks very unlike a human. You're not bothered by it. It gets closer and closer to looking like a human, and it's not quite 100% like a human. There is a drop, they call that the uncanny valley, where people are freaked out. If it looks exactly like a human, people are not freaked out. If it looks not like a human, they're not freaked out. It's just when it kind of looks like a human that people freak out, which is one of the reasons why all the robot makers give it a completely block head. Okay, so the body looks pretty good, right? It has fingers, it has arms, legs, or whatever, but the head is always just blocked because people freak out, particularly Americans and Westerners. Interesting. So let's talk about concerns. So now I've given you all the good and the neutral. Let's talk about some of the concerns. We have this framework. So Professor Michael Patrick Lynch is a philosopher and a professor at the University of Connecticut. He came up with a list of concerns I've added to his chart here. And these concerns range from individual to psychosocial to social concerns. We are not going to talk about every concern there is out there, but we're going to talk about some of the major ones. Okay? So the good news is, for all the people that are a little nervous about AI, or maybe more than nervous about AI, is that there are a lot of people working on this. There's lots of people working on this. Everything from philosophers, psychologists, neurologists. We have, therapists, you name it, people are working on it. Okay, so let's talk about some of the concerns. The first one I would call safety. Safety is an unfortunate term in my mind. I was a beta tester for OpenAI's 3.5. I was as a citizen developer, I was a beta tester for 3.5, and 90% of all the interaction we had was about safety. People weren't paying attention to what we were supposed to be doing. They were concerned that the thing was biased. Okay? And I'll talk about a couple of examples, but it was not terribly productive. But anyway, today, most safety is automatically put in by the LLM providers, the large language models providers like Anthropic and OpenAI and Google and so forth. Okay? So now, the large language model has everything in it, including how to build weapons and how to do bad things, all sorts of bad things in there. So what they have to do is they put a layer on top of it called the filter that blocks all those bad things that's in the model from coming out or going in. And of course, humans being humans want to try to break that filter. So there's even a term for it. It's called jailbreaking. And jailbreaking is people who attempt to break the filters on the large language models to get to the juicy stuff. Okay? So, but for the most part, safety is done by the large language models by putting in a filter. I personally think that OpenAI's filter is overkill. Okay? I mean, I asked for a cute little kid with a bunny rabbit, and it came back and said, content warning. Like, what? I still can't figure out what that particular set of words made the content filter go off. But anyway, so those are the kinds of things that we're working with today. Now, O1 and the more advanced models are actually better with their filters, and they're more difficult to break because obviously, in addition to building more capable reasoning models, they're trying to do safer models as well. So it's interesting where Miami came on the map. I'll just do a quick aside on this one. So about, I guess 2 years ago now, the White House, through the National Institute of Standards and Technology, NIST, asked for requests for information from about 200 organizations in the United States. So they said, hey, we need to have AI policy in the United States. What should it be? They asked 270 or some odd organizations for their inputs. One of those organizations was Miami AI Club, okay? So we prepared a response to the RFI saying what we thought should be the case. So it's not surprising that the result wasn't exactly what we thought it would be, but it is pretty lenient compared to like the EU model, which is very, very strict, and a lot of people are complaining about it. But one of the things that it asked for, that the White House and now is going to insist, and it may end up becoming law, is that before any model, large language model is released, that a so-called red team goes through some set of steps to try to break the model, to try to break the filters, to try to jailbreak it. That's called a red team. And we have Soro, which was announced by OpenAI, which is their video generation. It's called Soro. It was announced like a year ago or something like that. It's still not released because the red team keeps finding stuff, keeps finding a way for it to do illicit material that they don't want it to do. So that's safety. The next one, I was speaking to a therapist earlier today in this room on this one. This one's interesting. So we talked about this affective, this emotional axis, this x-axis on the AGI chart. Well, it so happens that there's a fairly decent industry now for companion bots. Companion bots are basically chat bots that are built to become your friend or your lover. There is one company called Replica, which at any given time has, I forgot how many millions of users, but at any given time they have several 100,000 people chatting with a companion bot. And then the new kid on the block is called Kindroid. Kindroid is actually much better. It is amazing in terms of its ability to act with emotion. You can create images, it can talk to you. It's a companion bot. It's not quite a digital human yet that we were talking about in the previous slides. But Kindroid is pretty amazing. So it's a thing now. There's hundreds of thousands of people at any given moment conversing with this. They can do it for various reasons. They can do it for entertainment. They can do it because they're lonely. They live in Alaska, you know, and there's just nobody around in their village. Or they could have had a bad breakup and they need somebody to talk to, et cetera, et cetera. Now, there's a danger to this.
How about for emergencies? Can they be trained for emergencies? Somebody...
Well, that's a different application. He asked if they could be trained for emergencies. So you wouldn't want it in a mental health emergency, you would not want to use for sure, but yeah. So, but one of the challenges, and the reason why it's on this list of this, is the companion bots can be anything that you want it to be. It can be the most understanding, most wonderful, most handsome boyfriend you've ever had. Problem is, you could get a dependency on this. Hence, this particular concern. So today, we can be hooked on our technology on social. There's the known called the social effect, where kids become addicted to their social feeds. Now, if you make that thing look like a perfect human, there's a dependency risk. So that's the bad side. Number 3, bias. Bias will define as the cause to feel or show an inclination or a prejudice for or against something or someone. One of the things that we discovered in this ChatGPT beta test, which I kind of already knew, which was humans cannot agree on what is biased. You can't expect the AI to. Let me repeat that. We say that the AI is biased, but we as humans do not in any way, well, maybe in some ways, but for the most part, we as humans don't agree on what is biased. So it's very difficult to put that into an AI. So that's one of our big challenges. So broadly agreed to categories are usually built into the safety filters, and there's some steering going on, okay? So you ask for a particular I would like, show me a gondolier, okay? Well, some of the steering will give you a female gondolier, 1 out of every 4 gondoliers. So that's called steering. So now there's a problem with overdoing this, oversteering, which is then you start creating a filter bubble, which is one of the problems that we have with social. You should not have too much filtering of bias because you get into a filter bubble. Everything everything you do with the AI will end up becoming, what you want it to be, which is not necessarily a good thing. And by the way, I said there was 1 photo in this entire deck that was not AI generated, and this is it. So, all right, weaponization, that's the fourth concern. This is deliberate use of AI for control or manipulation without the knowledge or consent of the impacted individual. This is a serious concern. We know it's happening. We know it happened on this election. We know it happened on the last election. It will be part of a lot of public, not just political, but public discourse going forward. It's a major problem. Now, this is important to note, and social scientists will tell you this, that it's important to note that the manipulator does not necessarily think that what they're doing is bad. That's important, okay? So you may be getting misinformation, but technically it's not disinformation. They are not purposely screwing up the information. They may do it to save you from your ways, whether it be religious, political, or social, okay? This is a key issue, and this is a big issue. Now, there are people that are bad actors, and they are doing disinformation. They know it's bad. I have a website right now. I have a couple of websites, but one, I get hit several times a day, about 10 times a day, with Russian bots. Because it's easy, and what they do is they try to break things. I also get hit with Chinese bots, and they don't try to break things, they try to learn things. Just a point here. But they try to learn things so that they can turn around and use it. And I don't mean just to pick on them. I'm just saying that's kind of the environment that we're in right now. The self-poisoning well is the next concern. This is actually the least of our concerns here. I'll tell you what the self-poisoning well is. Okay, so we know that how AI has gotten smart about stuff is that it's scraped all this stuff from the internet. Well, more and more of what's on the internet is actually AI generated. So it's cannibalizing its own information. That's called the self-poisoning well. That's the name of the problem. And the good news is that we know that that's the case, and so we're creating some mechanisms so that the AI knows to avoid AI-generated material, because it's cannibalism, basically. And cannibalism usually doesn't work out very well. Okay? So the next one is job loss, and this is the one that's often cited. Now, back in the old days, when I was a little kid, we always thought forward to this beautiful future when humans didn't have to work. I mean, to us, that was nirvana. What do you mean I didn't have to work? I could do whatever I want to do, right? I can just do anything I want to do, right? I don't have to work. Well, some of us, like me, I still think that way. But there are a lot of people who are saying, no, I want to work. I want to work until I drop dead. So we, as a society, we don't have 100% agreement on this, but it is true, probably true, that this is the first technology in history where there will be a net job loss. I say the first one. Now, if you read Kurzweil's newest book, The Singularity is Nearer, contrast that with his book from the 1990s called The Singularity is Near. But the latest one, The Singularity is Nearer, he makes the following observation, that most technology transformations has a de-skilling of work and then an upskilling of work. I'll give you an example. So when we had ATMs introduced, bank tellers were no longer used. And we thought that was horrible. All these poor bank tellers are going to be out of work. It's true. There was a de-skilling. That is to say, it is now, we had some very rote transactions that the ATM did. But then, after a little while, the bank tellers actually had a harder job than they did before, because now they were personal bankers. Now they didn't just transact money. That was kind of boring, and that's what the ATM's doing now. They don't do anything boring anymore. They do hard work now. They have to make the customer happy. They have to find out about the various financial instruments that are available, so forth and so on. So there has historically been a de-skilling and then an upskilling. AI may be different. Yes, we will have new jobs that are generated as a result of AI. But in general, the good news is, for people like me, is that there will be less need for work. Maybe that means we retire earlier. Maybe that means that we work shorter weeks. Who knows what it means? We don't know. But it's interesting to note, for those of you that are optimists like me, there is some conversation about UBI. What is UBI? Universal Basic Income. It's already being tried in the Scandinavian countries. The idea is that everybody will make a minimum income. Now, it's not great, okay, but it's a minimum income. And then if you want to do better, you can do better, and you can do whatever you want to. So I like the idea of being able to quit work early. I retired 10 years ago. I'm not even old enough to retire yet. Okay, so I don't like working myself, or I like working, I just like doing whatever I want to do, right? So the last concern is called the alignment problem. So, and I'm only 2 slides away, and then I'll take questions, so be thinking about what you would like to ask. So the misalignment problem is the broad social construct that the values and goals of the AI will not match the values and goals of humans. That's called the misalignment problem. Okay? Now, part of that concern is that we're anthropomorphizing AI. That is to say, because we would, as humans, take advantage of dumber creatures, we assume that AI would. Have you seen a science fiction movie in the last 20 years or 30 years, if you're that old, where the smart race weren't bad guys? Where they weren't blowing up everybody and taking over? That's it. So part of it is anthropomorphizing that AI is going to do badness because it's smarter. That's not to say it won't happen. I'm just saying that we have to be able to take away our bias towards not being in control, and therefore bad things will happen. Okay? It is possible, regardless of what we do as a group of people, because even if we had laws, you know, there was in 2022, the Future of Life Institute, which includes 7 Nobel laureates, and Elon, who's not a Nobel laureate, let me tell you, they wanted to pause all development, freeze all development of AI technology for 6 months. Because it was beginning to show things to them that scared them. Because those are called emergent properties. It's because they didn't understand what they didn't understand. And so it scared them. They wanted to pause. But then it was observed, if we pause, do you think everybody else in the world will pause? And when they got the answer back that no, they probably won't pause, they didn't pause. So there you go. But it is a concern, and it's a long ways off, or probably. Recently, the governor of California, Gavin Newsom, I lived there until 19, moved out here. He vetoed a bill that would say that all AI had to have a kill switch. And he vetoed it because it was too vague, and furthermore, it wasn't clear how you could put a kill switch on on an agentic AI. It's a little piece of software running. It's a little process. And there are maybe hundreds of thousands of them, millions of them, tens of millions of them. How do you put in a stop switch? So it's a problem. We don't know how to solve it. We don't think it's necessarily a problem, but we're not going to take that chance. So there you go. So in closing, this is my last slide here. What we talked about today is the terms and concepts of AGI and beyond. We've covered the technology journey over the last few decades that brought us to today, the good, and the ugly. We talked about a framework for looking at taking AI to the next level. We covered some concerns. And I would like to leave you guys with 3 words. Learn, discern, and participate. Let me explain what I mean. We're in a place where we don't know what's going to happen in 5 years. We can't be sure what's going to happen a year from now. So stay current. Try to stay current on what's going on. That brings me to the next one, which is discern. If you go to YouTube, for example, or wherever you go for social information, there will be a lot of misinformation, a lot of clickbait, a lot of garbage. You have to learn how to discern what is factual from what is aspirational, what is downright wrong. You know, there are some, like, I want to pick on one channel, AI Grid is the name of a channel on YouTube. It's all clickbait. It's like, you know, AI learns new weapon systems or whatever. It just tries to scare the crap out of you and you're going to click on it. So, not recommended. By the way, I would recommend Matthew Berman. He's a little bit more technical, absolutely factual. But this is where the discern comes in. If the people work for one of the big companies as a research scientist, or they work at one of the universities, it probably has more credibility than if some bro who decided they were going to talk about something. Okay? So that's where the discern comes in. And the last word, participate. This is the first technology that I know of in history where everybody can participate in the conversation. You can do it on the hard science because that's where your heart's at, or you can do it on the human ethics side and everything in between. So everybody, regardless of what is your interest, you can participate. And as you are today, you're participating in a few of these things. There are plenty of other sources for information, okay, and participating. So I would encourage you to all participate in this. How I got started in AI, I've been in technology my entire life, but I went to a party once. I was talking to a woman, and I asked her, well, what is it you do for a living? And she goes, I'm an AI artist. I said, what is that? She goes, I work with an AI to create art. And I went, wow, that is cool. And that's when I started getting into my AI journey. But, but in the conversation, it was clear, and again, this is one of thousands of conversations I've had on AI. She wasn't interested in the technology. She was interested in what it could do, that maybe it would create an idea for her and she would run off in a different direction or whatever the case may be. So I saw then that there was a place to participate for almost everybody. And with that, I will close and take questions. Any questions?
Earlier you said something about cerebral.
The what?
Oh, sorry, coming right here, hon.
Oh, okay. I don't know how to pronounce. You said cerebral. You said something earlier about cerebral. A pre-IPO. Was that a pre-IPO or an IPO?
No, a Cerebrus.
Oh, cerebrus.
Brus is C-E.
Wait 1 second.
C-E-R-E-B-R-U-S, Cerebrus. They even have a recommended ticker symbol, but just look it up by the Cerebrus.
Now, where would that be? Because if it's not up yet, where would you go? You just look them up on the internet?
Well, what you could do is you can just monitor like finance.yahoo.com or google.com. Just look for it to IPO. If you have a brokerage account, A lot of them will do an IPO watch.
Correct.
They'll look for.
But there isn't somewhere where you can get like a pre-IPO though. You don't know anything
Yes,
about that.
there are, by the way, there are a couple of different organizations where you can buy secondaries. I'm going to be a little technical here. You can buy private shares of private companies. One of them is Hive, Hiive, so it has two I's. Hive is one. There are a couple of others, and it's called secondaries. What happens is the initial investors will offer their shares to a secondaries market with a markup, so be aware of that. So somebody bought a whole bunch of shares in OpenAI, for example, and then they're going to, let's say they own 1 million shares, they may offer 500,000 to other people at a premium. They'll make a little money on that, right?
Of course.
That's called secondaries. So Hive is one, there's a couple of others. And if you're going to do that, then you don't need to restrict yourself to IPO'd companies.
Correct. So another question, I mean, if you don't mind.
And just a quick plug.
Okay.
So me and a couple other people were thinking about doing an AI fund so that we would buy the private companies and then you would buy shares in the fund. I'm just saying.
Okay.
I actually cannot solicit, that's illegal.
But as a friend, you can give me an advice.
Yeah.
Okay, so I had another question.
Okay, one more.
You said about discerning the information from right and wrong,
Yeah.
what could be right. Now, how would you know what is right from wrong? Would you have to go on your personal opinion, or would you have to, I mean, how would you face that?
Okay, it's a great question. How on a discern, how do you know? Well, you don't. It is actually a critical skill that we as humans need to learn, and to teach our children, by the way, to discern. And what you can do is what is the likelihood? You know, if we had Leopold Aschenbrenner, okay, he's a guy that used to work for OpenAI, and he wrote this manifesto about, AGI and all that kind of stuff. Well, I mean, he used to work as a research scientist for the biggest AI company in the world. So I'm going to tend to believe what he says. I still have a bit of a questioning eye. But if we get some guy that said, I heard from a guy who heard from a guy that blah, 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 I'm just not going to believe him. So who is it? Where are they from? Is there a clear agenda? Like, no matter after watching it, they're clearly trying to get you to buy this or, an advisory or whatever. That's actually a critical human skill that's going to be very difficult to emulate, and also train your family and kids on it.
So in other words, just really do deep due diligence into everything you look at.
Yeah, basically, I would recommend that. I think that's the world we live in today. I mean, I am surprised about what people think in the social political environment, that to me, it should be obvious that that's not true. I mean, it's complete, but, anyway. So, yeah, there's no absolute, we use the term heuristic. There's a couple of rules of thumb to follow, but that's about all we can do. Next question.
I got the next question right over here.
Okay. Hi, Patricia.
Hi, Tahl. Well, I loved your talk, and I'm sorry that I missed the first 5 minutes, but the traffic was terrible. Anyway, I was interested in the statement that you made regarding the changes in healthcare. You said that most probably there's going to be a loss of jobs in healthcare, but don't you see it as an opportunity to make it more human? Like, I think that the biggest pain when you go to see a doctor or when you are hospitalized is that doctors don't have time to have the human interaction.
No, let me get in front of that set of questions. Today, we don't have near enough medical professionals for the problem. I'm an advisor to a startup that was founded by 4 surgeons. They're doing work in Canada. One of the provinces of Canada has a 14-month backlog for surgeries. 14 months backlog, unless it's an emergency. It's because they don't have the medical professionals. So, kind of to your point, at this point, the doctors need to spend more with the personal interaction. Now, with that said, AI is looking to be very good on triage, being able to find out where to go, validating some of the doctor's recommendations. For obscure diseases, not every doctor is going to know everything. It's going to be their companion. So it's going to be assistive. There are some roles that will probably not be as active. One of those is radiologists. Anything that's data analysis, radiology is data analysis basically, it's probably going to be not one that I would recommend a medical student to follow.
Yeah, or even pathology,
Oh yeah, so,
right?
but I mean, one of the epiphanies I had when I was a young man is how very little we know about the human body, how many diseases we have no cures for, we don't even know the cause of the disease. And so if we were to, cut into that even a little bit with AI, we're doing goodness.
Thank you so much. And just, I want to point out that they're talking about the universal base income. And in my country, there is something that is that without that term. So Belgium is the only country, I think, in the planet that has
UBL.
Permanent unemployment benefit.
Actually,
And,
Norway.
Yeah, you could have it forever even without having it started yet.
Yeah.
So, because it's considered that you can also have unemployment benefits after your studies.
Thank you.
Very good. Well, thank you, everyone. I think we'll do one last
I'm happy to keep
We'll do one
taking
last
questions.
question. One last question, but
Really?
after this question, yeah, well, I think we can ask after, but
Okay.
keep it going.
I'm happy to keep going.
Just a quick question. So, are you able to pattern the company or the technology you create from AI? And if not, isn't it's easier for other people to just duplicate your company's model with AI now?
I'm sorry, I don't understand the question.
Let's say like you create an app and,
Yeah.
are you able to pattern it? Just,
Well, okay, so it is, apps are easily duplicated, I mean, by definition, and they're easily duplicated today, which is one of the reasons why we tend to hesitate on investing in apps, because if an app is a hit, you can get an offshore team to put together something that looks just like it in a few weeks. So, now with that said, there are a lot of people who imagine that once AI is fully cooked, that it's no longer going to program. We don't have programs. It will just do a real-time, it will run real-time, basically. Okay? So in other words, we go through a step now where we have data, it goes into an application, then it pops out data, right? Well, we bypass the step and just have AI work with the data directly. So I'm not sure I'm answering your question, but.
so if that's so easy to duplicate, so what's going to happen to all this big company if, let's say, like you can just build Spotify tomorrow
Well, yeah, there's a couple of questions embedded in that. There are software companies that are going to have to change their business model, because if they rely on software, which is easily duplicated, or probably as important, becomes irrelevant. It's not that it's duplicated, it's just that nobody wants to use it anymore, okay, for whatever reason. You have supply chain, for example, there are billions and billions of dollars in B2B SaaS companies that do nothing but supply chain stuff, okay, moving materials. That entire ecosystem is probably going to go away and be optimized that you have end-to-end supply chain management with AI. You don't need to have all the different steps for the different industries. For example, medical supply chain is very different because it has to be refrigerated maybe at every stage. You have things that are big and bulky, different supply chain, et cetera, all different industries, all very fragmented. Probably 90% of those companies are going to go out of business because AI is just going to be able to connect all the dots and do it seamlessly. So if you are a supply chain company, my suggestion is you be willing to pivot or start pivoting now or become the AI that does that. So,
Amazing, amazing. Thank you, everybody, for a great GP Tuesday.
all right.
I think we all learned so much today from Tahl. Thank you again so much for teaching all of us about AGI. Really appreciate it.
Sure.
Really appreciate it. Who here learned something new? Yes, artificial narrow intelligence, artificial general intelligence, and artificial superintelligence, and all the concerns. It's very, very fascinating to learn and very useful for our future. So thank you again, Tahl. I think it's very important that everyone stays up to date. We know what's coming so that we can best be prepared for it.
Learn, discern, and participate.
Learn, discern, and participate. Amazing. Can everyone repeat that? Learn, discern, and participate. Yeah.